Welcome to another episode of Fundraising Today. Today we're exploring the landscape of DEIAB, which stands for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Accessibility, and Belonging, and how these principles can be applied to nonprofit boards. We're going to be unpacking this topic with Christal Cherry and Renee Rubin Ross. So Christal and Renee, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning to both of you, or good afternoon if we're in different time zones. Before we dive into putting some definitions around these different words and going deeper into it, I'd love to get a little bit more information about your backgrounds and then what kind of led you to focus on DEIAB work, particularly within board settings.
I'm Christal Cherry. Again, thank you for having me. So many things have happened in the last few years. So I retired from my gig as a nonprofit fundraiser. I've been working in the sector for about 23, 24 years in that capacity, and decided right before the pandemic to hang out my shingle and work primarily with nonprofit boards. And of course, partnered with that was the pandemic and the social unrest that happened in 2020. So lots of conversations about race equity. And so since I was working with boards, that was the population and the space I was playing in, I started having conversations with them about these topics and realized early on that there was a lot of work to be done. And in the meantime, I ran into Renee in the Zoom spaces of that time and realized that we had some mutual interest, and we just got together, we clicked, and we've been working together ever since. And so I'm going to stop and let Renee introduce herself and share a little bit about her journey.
Thank you. Hello, Dr. Renee Rubin Ross. My firm is the Ross Collective, based in Northern California, and we work all over the country. We design and lead inclusive conversations, and I also run the Cal State East Bay Nonprofit Management Certificate Program. And man, as Christal was saying, we connected, and I think I had done a webinar on great board practices, and someone said, you need to meet Christal. And then strangely enough, I saw one of her webinars and I was like, this is fabulous. I can meet this person. So we started talking and just started collaborating, and have collaborated on a number of projects and writing, consulting, and learning from each other.
To start out, let's put a little bit of definitions around diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging. That way, whenever we're talking about this acronym of DEIAB, we all can be on the same page about what these words mean, how we're using them, the context that we're using them, and then we can go from there.
Sounds good to me. I can start with diversity. Diversity is just about numbers, right? Making sure that we have spaces and the places, particularly as it relates to nonprofits, the faces of the people in the communities that our nonprofits are serving, whether it be on your staff or on your board or in your volunteer base or your donor base, making sure that all voices from those communities are represented. So it's just a numbers thing when we talk about diversity. Renee, do you want to talk about equity and inclusion?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I define equity is that people who are impacted by challenges are weighing in on the solutions. That is so that people who are impacted by the challenges or closest to those challenges are weighing in on the solutions, and systems are shifted so that people who are outside of power move towards power. So there's really both a systemic dimension and also a representation dimension, that it really is people who see a challenge, who could be the ones to come together and create the solution. I think inclusion is, wow, it's a mindset, I would say, in terms of we want to hear different perspectives. We understand that we're going to need all kinds of voices to find solutions to the complicated challenges that our organizations and our society are encountering now. And belonging, wow, Christal and I have talked a lot about belonging. That's definitely one that we can count on together. I think we see it as a circle, and there isn't one person saying, come in, but it's really each person saying, hey, I'm part of the circle. I feel that all of my different identities are affirmed, honored, loved, and seen.
And it really can be subjective because belonging is different too for everyone, right? But making sure that whoever you are, you can come show up in those spaces with all of yourselves, right? Your full whole personhood can come into that meeting space and be accepted, whether you're a woman or a person of color or someone who is physically challenged or mentally challenged, right? Someone from the LGBTQ community. And that can be different for each one of those groups, each one of those individuals, but just making sure that space is made so that whoever's in the room, they feel like they are part of what's going on, the larger picture, and that they can weigh in and that they're accepted and they're valued and respected for who they are and what they bring to the conversation.
I've also been thinking a lot about accessibility recently, especially in terms of a client that the Ross Collective has been working with. It's Yerba Buena Gardens. So this is a garden in the middle of San Francisco, public garden. And part of the issue is there are a couple issues. One of them is that there are a lot of stairs, and so not everybody can physically access the gardens. There aren't a lot of signs. Some of the signs are only in one language. And so not everybody can access those and understand what's in the gardens. So it's really thinking about what kind of barriers exist right now that prevent everybody from enjoying a space, an organization, a community. And what do we want to do about that?
When it comes to encouraging more diversity and equity, inclusion, all these things, when it comes to boards, what is the starting point for doing that work with a nonprofit?
Yeah, so when Renee and I work together, we of course meet with the executive director. We try to make sure we meet with the board chair to have a good sense of what's going on with the organization. And many times, when they bring us in, it's usually because a problem has arisen. There's some fires that need to be put out, and so they bring Renee and I in. So we try to do a good job of really trying to do an assessment of the culture, and that can include interviewing people, looking at through all their collateral and materials, sometimes doing surveys, really just trying to get a full understanding of who this organization is, who the people at the organization are, and where they are right now in their journey of learning about other board members and including other board members. And many times we're starting from scratch because they're clueless and they have no idea how to begin having conversations to bring people into their space. So that's how we get started. I'm going to let Renee take it from there.
Yeah, I think often what we do is go back to the organization's mission again and again. So, for example, not long ago, we worked with an organization that focuses on supporting people through a disease. And we talked about how everybody, no matter what racial background, is impacted by this disease. And yet there is much less access to good health care, knowing everything that we know about health equity for people of color. And so what do we want to do about that? And really helping all board members to start seeing how equity shows up in the mission of the organization and what changes, and think about what changes they might need to make in order to build a more equitable organization. We are certainly passionate about what we do, but we're not gonna talk anyone. If somebody really believes that this has no value, we're probably not going to talk them into it. We certainly share, we share our own stories. We encourage all kinds of people to share their stories, but there needs to be an openness and a readiness at the beginning of the process for this to be successful.
And some board members are not ready. A lot of times we'll get the green light from the board chair and the executive director who are ready. But some board members are resistant and they don't understand the relationship between we're here to help fulfill this specific mission. We don't understand why we're talking about race. We don't understand why we're talking about diversity. This is not why I signed up to be on this board. So we do get some resistance sometimes, and we have to bring them back to who is it that your community is serving? What is your mission? How are you trying to impact the world? Who's in your ecosystem? Like, and so we start bringing them back to those things, and we realize equity has to be embedded throughout, regardless of what the mission is.
I just wanted to say that sometimes there's one person in the group who's really going to jump in And so I'm thinking about this group that we worked with a while back, and there was one white woman where we started talking about race and about equity and all these different ideas, and everybody was very quiet. And then she said, I just feel that we have so much work to do, and I really feel bad about the history of the organization and who we have served up to now, and I want to change things. And she got the ball rolling in terms of the work. So I think finding those people, and she had done her own racial justice work over many years. And so was ready to bring something from outside to this organization.
Very interesting and extremely thought-provoking. Let's move a little bit into some more of the process of this work. How can organizations foster a culture where DEIAB is not just a checkbox, but something that's truly integrated into the fabric of the organization?
One of the things Renee and I encourage them to do is not just think about just their boards, but the policies regarding staff and how they interact with donors and how they interact with volunteers, how they interact with one another. It has to permeate throughout the whole culture of the organization. It can't be one stakeholder group or just one department that's working on this. So sometimes we'll find that the staff has done this DEI work and the board has no idea, or vice versa, or a department has done it, right? Only the finance department or the programs team or someone is doing the work and the rest of the organization is not. And basically, this whole idea that there's a cog, Renee and I embraced the Awake the Wolf to Work approach to centering equity. And their philosophy and their model has a cog where all this is cog. In order for this cog to move, all stakeholder groups have to push the lever in order for the cog to keep moving around to get to this equity. And if one stakeholder group stops pushing their lever, then it stops. And so this is something that requires everybody in the organization to embrace and to work on in order for us to continue to have this cycle where we're moving round and around towards race equity. Renee, you want to add?
I guess what I'll add is with any kind of planning, there's this kind of phase of like assessment, which we talked about before. Where are you? How are things going? How are things going with your board? How are things going with your staff? What's happening with policies? What in what ways is this working? Where does it need to go? Then you get to a shared understanding. All right. This is what's successful so far. Here's some other possibilities. And then the last part, which Christal and I lead, is creating an action plan. That might mean revising the HR manual. That might mean shifting the board matrix. That might mean different kinds of ways that even the board meeting needs to be held at a different time so that more people can participate. That might be stipends for childcare so that people can be on the board. Just thinking about all the different things, and then what does the organization want to do? And we know this is lifelong work for people and for organizations. So usually some of what comes out in terms of planning is really about, all right, we're going to keep learning and reflecting as a board and a staff too.
Let's move on to sustainability and some final thoughts to wrap up today. How can boards ensure that these DEIAB efforts are sustained over the long term rather than being seen as a temporary trend or initiative? Another way to phrase this question is, how can we keep, nonprofits and their boards from getting complacent that like, yes, we did it. Do you have any recommendations there?
Like so many things, I think there's a piece of planning, which is how are we going to incorporate this into our daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is, routine, and how are we going to keep this as part of the conversation? So I think really formalizing that this is an area to talk about at every board meeting, and whether it's learning or reporting back or thinking about how the organization's doing and doing more planning, just knowing that, as Christal said, wow, we took somewhere between 200 to 400 years to get where we are right now. And this is an ongoing change process. And yeah, again, I think the energy for that goes back to the why and to the mission. We want to be an organization that serves all people. We want to be an organization with whatever, whether it's health or art or culture, that feels expansive. And actually, sometimes it really is. Occasionally we hear about organizations like it's been the same 10 white people who have been on the board for the last 20 years. I was like, how's that working for you? Maybe there needs to be some new people. What we know about board practices overall is that it's a good idea to have term limits and to bring new energy and people on the board no matter what. And then, all right, how is their representation from the communities and from the changing people in the community?
Yeah, and I think normalizing this into your culture every day. So this is not just a Black History Month thing, right? It's in terms of creating a calendar, a DEI calendar where all cultures and traditions are considered when you're thinking about planning events or planning a meeting. It's not just Christmas and Hanukkah, right? The big ones that we know, but traditions from other ethnic groups that we sometimes forget, like Diwali and Kwanzaa and other whatever other holidays that some of our folks, these new diverse people that you're bringing in, Asian folks, LGBTQ, like just making sure that you're acknowledging those dates so that you're not planning events or meetings or anything during those times where those people might need to be away. So making sure that you're recognizing their cultures, looking at your normal activities, everyday activities in terms like Renee said, when are you planning meetings? Are you planning early morning meetings when moms with single moms or moms with small children can't get to because they get their kids off to school in the morning, or they're trying to get their elderly parents in place before they leave or get ready for the day? What is our reimbursement policies like when we travel? This is something Renee and I have talked about before. Is it such that everybody is supposed to use their own personal credit card and wait to be reimbursed in 30 to 60 days once your finance department can come through, assuming that everybody has a credit card, everyone has a credit card that has space on it for you to put a $2,000 work trip on there, and making people feel bad about that. So just how in our normal everyday functioning, just looking at our policies, reviewing how we're acting towards one another, reviewing how we're structuring our meetings and how our policies and how it interacts and impacts our staff. So it's not just the board meeting that we're going to look at, but all day, every day. This is long-term work, right? It's not just coming in and we're going to say, for the month of February, it's Black History Month, so we're all going to talk about the DEIB. And then March rolls around and no one's talking about it.
One final question. All very deep questions that I think we're going to take home and think more about. Renee and Christal, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to sit down and have this conversation with our listeners and our viewers. And I think you gave us all many wonderful and probing things to think about. If folks would like to get in touch with either one of you, what's the best way for them to do that? And Christal, I'll go ask you first.
Yeah, the name of my firm is The Board Pro, and you can reach me at theboardpro.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and love to link up with new people, so please look me up. Christal M. Cherry.
And my firm is the Ross Collective, and I have a newsletter that I send out twice a month on strategy, leadership, and racial equity. So the Ross Collective, subscribe if you want to join the newsletter. And I'm on LinkedIn too. Yeah. And sometimes we even present together, all that kind of good stuff. And we each have something on our website about the board training
yes.
and workshop that we offer together. But we have a lot of other things we do as well.
Yes, there's so many other wonderful services that both of you offer to the nonprofit community to make them run faster and harder after their missions and make sure that no one gets left out. Once again, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciated your time.